Let me bring up Invaders for a second. Basically, Invaders keeps emphasizing that Eren and Zeke are the ones responsible for the declaration of war, not Willie or Marley. Let me repeat the logic one more time. Eren, through Zeke, manipulates Willie and Marley into doing the declaration of war, so Eren is the one responsible, not Willie or Marley. Marley are the real victims here. If you don't understand my problem, let me give the Berserk analogy. Who is the one responsible for sacrificing the Band of the Hawk? Griffith or the God Hand? Now, the most obvious person responsible is Griffith, right? And I did say that Eren is influenced by Griffith. No. I ask for us to be consistent. I ask for us to keep using ending defender logic on this. Eren manipulated Willie to declare war. Willie is now responsible. Eren is responsible. Griffith was manipulated by the God Hand into sacrificing the Band of the Hawk. Do you see where I'm going with this? The God Hand was responsible for sacrificing the Band of the Hawk. Griffith is not responsible for sacrificing the Band of the Hawk, simply because he was the one manipulated. But let's not just stop there, brother. Listen to what Invader says.
An argument frequently used to justify Eren's attack on the festival is that it was only a response to Willie's declaration of war. However, as I've spent so long explaining, it was the complete opposite. The brothers' plan is what caused Willie to declare war in the first place, and his strategy to make himself into a martyr relied on Parody attacking at that very moment. But what if Eren had changed his mind at the last minute, hadn't attacked, and the festival had ended without incident? In that scenario, it's possible that Willie's entire plan would have fallen apart.
Did you understand what he meant? Basically this. Eren was going against the peace talks. Eren was rebelling against peace. Why was he doing this? Guys, it's an Invaders video. It obviously has something to do with Armin's book. Pay close attention to the following points. Number 1. Eren was preventing Armin from establishing peaceful negotiations with the outside world because he wanted the rumbling from the start. Point number 2. Had Eren not attacked at the declaration of war, the outside world would not have joined Marley in attacking Parody. Armin would have likely been successful in negotiating peaceful solutions with the outside world. Now let's try and see if they're headcanons. I'll start with number 2.
His speech relied on him becoming a victim of the very threat he described. Without this happening, his words would have been empty.
Invaders looked you in the eyes and said, his words would have been empty. How could this be, when already the people were crying tears of joy at the thought of murdering everyone on Parody?
With no imminent threat, it's unlikely that the world would have fiercely rallied against Parody in the same way that we watched happen.
Oh wow, that's a nice fallback plan, brother. Even if I debunked you right here and now, you could easily argue,
oh well, they wouldn't have invaded Parody as fiercely.
But it could get even worse for Willie. If Parody had made their peaceful intentions clear to the world after Willie's speech, his entire strategy could have backfired. If it appeared to the world that Willie's speech was nothing more than cheap manipulation to boost Marley's global standing, their response may have been drastically different.
Really? It was because Eren attacked at the declaration of war that the outside world chose to side with Marley and attack Parody. Okay. Eren plans the declaration of war with Yelena, and by proxy, Zeke. Eren goes to Marley with his friends. Eren meets Ramsey. Mikasa's questioned. Eren goes to the meeting and he leaves. Skip forward a little bit, then it's chapter 100, the declaration of war. Okay. Outside world would have joined Marley only if Eren attacked at the declaration of war. I know I am repeating myself a lot of times, but this repetition is necessary. So, if Eren wasn't present at the declaration of war, the outside world would have been singing Kumbaya with Armin. Ready? Chapter 138. When Eren runs away prior to the Eldian Rights Group meeting. 3 things could have happened. Either Zeke cancelled the festival for the declaration of war, or the declaration of war happened, but Eren wasn't present, or the declaration of war has yet to occur. But if you noticed, there's a constant in all 3. He was not there to attack at the declaration of war. This is the perfect testing ground for Invaders' headcanon. Let's check the results. Chapter 138, Eren says, it's been 2 months since the Marleyan War ended. The war to invade Parody will begin soon. What a surprising turn of events. In the timeline, where Eren does not attack at the declaration of war, Marley in the outside world still choose to invade Parody. But this is strange. Invaders' point was so easy to debunk just by reading the story. I must have missed some crucial details, so please let's continue. We might argue this takes place after Eren attacked at the declaration of war. Okay, but Eren ran prior to the declaration of war. because this was after Mikasa's question. I'll get back to this, but this leads to point number 1. In the timeline where Eren does not attack at the declaration of war, meaning the problem of Eren's little rebellion against peace is gone, meaning Armin's idea of talking it out is unhindered, they still invade Paradis. Do you know why? Because the outside world, through Isayama's masterful world building, is characterized to be nothing more than racists, hateful towards Paradis and the Eldians. Let me take a wild guess. You're going to use Lil Falco. How about you not use an outlier to generalize the population of racist, xenophobic bigots as innocent people? Are you going to use Ramsay and his family as examples of people who were not racist towards Eldians? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna give you another example, and I'll show you why the Ramsay argument is bad. Chapter 114. What about this cleaner? Let's read this great example of kindness. Visitors this early? You don't see that every day. I'll come back later. Oh my god, my heart is warming up already. Oh, Eldians. Oh my goodness, what a surprise, what a plot twist. How could I ever seen this coming? You demons have tainted my workplace. You descendants of devils who've massacred every last thing you could. It'd be natural for your kind to be exterminated. This guy pulled a faster 180 than the Eremikas did on Isayama because of the extra pages. In the same way that the cleaner was kind to them because he did not know they were Eldians, Ramsay and his family were kind to them because he did not know they were Eldians. Let me go a little bit more into chapter 114 for a little bit. Grisha says, "Remember this well, Zeke. This is the outside world." Not just Zeke, Grisha. Maybe invaders and ending defenders should also remember this well. And if you noticed, this is Grisha, right? And knowing that Eren got the memories of Grisha, it would mean that Eren would have witnessed this moment with his own eyes. Grisha says, "If you can't stand this world, you're going to have to change it." Grisha was telling this to Zeke, but surely, with Eren seeing Grisha's memories, Eren might have taken this specific dialogue seriously. Eren can't stand this world because of their cruelty, so he will change it. Now let's continue on with this outside world. Chapter 87, Sergeant Gross says, "All of humanity wishes for the same thing, to wipe out every last Eldian." Chapter 89, Eren Kruger says, "The only reason they've kept so many Eldians alive inside the Intraman area is because each living Eldian is one more pure Titan they can add to their military forces. Most people think it'd be better to slaughter us all than turn us into such unreliable weapons." Chapter 98, Udo says, "The hostility that Eldians face here is nothing compared to the way it is in other countries. You want me to pretend that Eren wasn't disappointed at humanity's cruelty, but just at the idea of humanity existing outside the walls? But let me guess, you are going to use Willie's dialogue in the carriage in chapter 100. Invader says,
If it appeared to the world that Willie's speech was nothing more than cheap manipulation to boost Marley's global standing, their response may have been drastically different.
I am not surprised.
Perhaps Paradis could have even made a bid to ally with the nations that opposed Marley.
Ah yes, the Eldians making a bid with the outside world, who hate Eldians even more than Marley. That bid you speak of would have likely ended in failure, as per usual with Armin. Let's read it out. The world will not pay attention to me unless I stand there before them. We must have militaries, journalists, and diplomats from around the world. The most important thing of all is for the Eldians in this interment zone to become tragic victims, myself included. Victims of an unforeseen attack. The world would not take my side if I was the only one to escape. Oh dear, I clearly got debunked. The world would not take Willie's side if he was the only one to escape. Victims of an unforeseen attack? How about the victim of an attack that never happened because Eren was not present to attack at the declaration of war because he ran away? Would the world still take your side? Apparently so.
But what if Eren had changed his mind at the last minute, hadn't attacked, and the festival had ended without incident? In that scenario, it's possible that Willie's entire plan would have fallen apart. His speech relied on him becoming a victim of the very threat he described. Without this happening, his words would have been empty. With no imminent threat, it's unlikely that the world would have fiercely rallied against Paradis in the same way that we watched happen.
Clearly, invaders. Eren was not there at the festival, yet they're still invading. They still choose to become the invaders. Though you can say they're not invading as fiercely because of what you said before, that was not the logic you were propping up. The logic was that if Eren had not attacked, they would not be invading. Can you see how that fallback plan was oh so convenient?
Regardless, it's clear that the events of history would have played out very differently if Eren had chosen not to attack.
Clearly, the events of history would have been different had Eren chosen not to attack. Again, alternate timeline. Eren ran away. Eren was not there to attack, yet they are still invading. But let me guess, Willie only declared because he knew they would attack at the festival? But do you think Willie would have known that Eren ran away? Chronology-wise, the plan for the declaration of war was set before Eren came to Marley in chapter 123, right? I'll repeat this again. If Eren runs away, he wouldn't have been there to attack at the declaration of war. So why are they still invading? Are we going off on Eren and Zeke's meeting as the actual time they planned that declaration of war? You mean to tell me that Eren only went along with the plan after his optimism got crushed by the Eldian Rights Group meeting? Damn, it's like I said this in part 1. But anyways, so Eren runs away. This meeting never occurs. So I take it that the declaration of war never happened. It got called off. Then why are they still invading? Okay, let's do a little chronology mix-up. Let's say the declaration of war meeting with Yelena and by proxy Zeke happened after Eren leaves the meeting in chapter 123. Okay, since Eren ran away, the declaration of war festival was never happening. Then why are they still invading? Does this not show us that the outside world was only using the declaration of war as an excuse to kill Parody? Even without the declaration, they'll still find another excuse to invade Parody. Of course, you might be able to debunk my argument by saying this entirely different world is not an alternate timeline where the plan for the festival still took place, but instead it's a false memory where Eren was feeding false memories to Mikasa. In that case, either alternate timeline or giving memories, you just lead me to a different problem with the ending entirely, the memory manipulation plot hole. But even if you did debunk me, I'm not finished. But let's just keep biting on this alternate timeline. Do you know why this happens? Why they still invade? Even in this alternate timeline? Because diplomacy was never a possibility, and this was built up by the story through Armin's Talk No Jutsu failures. Chapter 11, Armin Talk No Jutsu, ends with success. They were about to be blown up sky high. Eren's freedom scene would have been nothing compared to this. Chapter 31, Armin's Talk No Jutsu with Annie, ends with success. Look at them, they successfully captured Annie. Chapter 78, Armin's Talk No Jutsu with Bertolt, ends with success. Bertolt exploded himself because of Armin. Chapter 128, Armin's Talk No Jutsu with Samuel and Daz, ends with Armin getting shot in the mouth. Surely, the most obvious symbolism would be, talking does not work. And before you say, Armin's plans work well in the past, that was when Armin actually used his brain and not just his mouth. They captured Bertolt because Armin acted as bait. Armin did not just use Talk No Jutsu, did he? But now, when all Armin does is try talking it out, like someone who only knows about Thorfinn's pacifism vow through memes, the result would be very clear. Armin's peace talks would have never worked. Eren already knew that diplomacy wouldn't work from the future memories he received from touching Historia's hand in chapter 90. He sees the Eldian Rights Group meeting in his memories, sees diplomacy wouldn't work. He visits the Eldian Rights Group meeting, literally confirms to him that diplomacy wouldn't work. Unless you mean to tell me that Eren didn't just manipulate Willie, but he also manipulated this speaker to be all hostile towards Parody. Eren was going against Armin's diplomacy because waiting it out for Armin's unreliable Talk No Jutsu would mean relying on unreliable comrades. Chapter 25, Levi's Choice. Either believe in yourself or your reliable comrades. Chapter 28, believing in his comrades caused them all to die. And Eren knows his talking is unreliable because Eren was literally there to witness him fail his Talk No Jutsus. Chapter 11, Eren was there to witness. Chapter 31, Eren was there to witness. Chapter 78, Eren was there to witness. Third time's the charm. 3 is the magic number, because by the 4th time. Chapter 128, Eren is not there to witness Armin's failure, because Eren already knew Armin's talking was unreliable. Eren was not going against Armin's diplomacy because he wanted the rumbling, but because Eren already knew diplomacy would never work. If it would never work, and the world will still declare war on Parody, because the world was that hell-bent on destroying Parody, he might as well accelerate the process of them declaring war and get it over with, because the rumbling would guarantee that Parody would not be left up to chance. Chapter 28, because he would believe in himself instead of his unreliable comrades. Eren, by retaliating at the declaration of war, did not ruin any possible chance of diplomacy, of establishing peace between the outside world and Parody, because there was never any chance to talk it out in the first place. But we can't have that. We have to make sure Eren takes complete responsibility for the declaration of war, because otherwise Willie and Marley would be responsible, and that would make Marley the villains instead of Eren. And we all know how Marley are the poor victims here. So, Eren manipulated Willy, so Willy is now responsible. Eren is for the declaration of war. In the same way that in Berserk, Griffith is now responsible for sacrificing the Band of the Hawk because the God had manipulated Griffith. Of course, a possible rebuttal to this would be Eren manipulating Grisha into killing the Rice family. By our supposed logic, Grisha isn't to blame at all. It's Eren for killing the family. I like that consistency already, but I'm pretty sure the people responsible would be both Eren and Grisha. The point I was trying to make was that invaders put all the responsibility on Eren with the declaration of war. Invaders made sure that Willy and Marley can't be blamed. If you don't believe me, check out this video. But I'm not quite done yet with Invaders' idea of Eren rebelling against any peace talks. Listen to Invaders here.
One of the most common criticisms directed at the Scouts is that they supposedly did nothing to prevent Marley's attack, and that it was their inaction which forced Eren to unleash the rumbling. That's completely untrue. The Scouts did everything they could to reach an alternative solution, even going so far as to sneak into Marley themselves. There's not much else that could have been reasonably asked of them.
How about I ask for Armin to not waste time busting his colossal nuts to a crystal for 4 years? Would that be a reasonable thing to ask, Invaders? Chapter 127, The Conversation Between Hanji and John. We should be able to buy ourselves a few years of time even if they do come to destroy the island. But the last time we looked for a possible solution like that, we ran out of time and we're still empty-handed. That's why Eren decided to wipe out the rest of the world. Chapter 132, Hanji says, I'll admit it. I had no solutions, no hope, and no future to show Eren. I was powerless. Chapter 133, Armin says, We were wrong. We're the ones who forced you to this point. Invader says,
One of the biggest reasons this belief gained so much prominence was because of Eren and Hanji's discussion in Chapter 107. The ambiguous translation of Eren's dialogue seems to imply that he was desperately searching for an alternative to the rumbling, yet could not find one due to the Scouts' incompetence. However, what Eren was actually saying was that Hanji had no choice but to rely on him and Zeke, as the military would be powerless without them. What was seen by many as a cry for help was in reality the complete opposite, and by this point, Eren had already decided that he would destroy the world.
Gentlemen, you just witnessed Invaders make up its most obvious headcanon. So, Chapter 107, you would obviously interpret the scene of Eren's question to Hanji that Eren is asking for an alternative to the rumbling. Chapter 132, Hanji says, and you might interpret her dialogue as a response to Chapter 107. I'll admit it, I had no solutions, no hope, and no future to show Eren. I was powerless. But we cannot have that interpretation now, can we? Because it would imply, it would suggest that Eren does not want to do the rumbling and is still looking for alternative solutions. It would mean that the rumbling was Eren's last resort in response to the outside world. Can't have that. So let's recontextualize the scene. Now, instead of Eren asking for an alternative solution to the rumbling, it is now Eren telling Hanji that there is no other way other than the rumbling. Eren here is actually bragging instead of desperately and angrily asking for an alternative. The original and common interpretation of this scene is more reliable than Invaders' interpretation simply because the Scouts' incompetence leading to the rumbling is referenced back in Chapter 127, Chapter 132, Chapter 133. Chapters which I literally just showed the dialogue of. Because these chapters are special. Because if you notice, it's not the audience that described the Scouts as incompetent. It's the Scouts themselves that admitted their own incompetence in finding an alternative solution. And I did not even include Armin's little crystal fetish in Chapter 110. So yeah, it really makes you wonder, if Invaders' interpretation of the story is the correct narrative, why does he need to recontextualize many scenes so drastically? And before you say anything, I understand recontextualization through the Titan Shifter reveals. But the way Invaders does it,
For the next hour and a half, I'd like to ask you to forget everything you think you know about the series.
it is a bit much.
Understanding Eren takes not only a deep dive of the entire story, but also an open mind and a willingness to reconsider your preconceptions and past expectations. If you can do that, I think you'll find that Eren's arc is a fascinating piece of character writing grounded in philosophy, with a lot to say about the meaning of freedom.
I just love how this man gaslights. You have to forget everything you know about the series, because if you don't, you'll remember details in the series that debunks Invaders' headcanons. You'll see more examples of what I'm talking about later.